These are 20 hidden facts about Stagecoach, the 1939 Western that transformed John Wayne from a B-movie nobody into Hollywood's biggest star and changed the course of American cinema forever. Some of these facts have stayed buried for over 80 years, and I can promise that even the most devoted Western fans watching this have never heard at least half of them. Most of you already know the basics about this film. John Ford directed it, John Wayne became a star because of it, and Monument Valley served as the backdrop. What you don't know is how a desperate trading post owner carrying his last $60 changed movie history, why Wayne earned less money than almost everyone else in the cast, and what actually happened during those legendary stunt sequences that people still talk about today. Let's get into it, and by the end of this video you'll never watch Stagecoach the same way again. Hidden fact number 1. The $60 gamble that changed Hollywood. The story of how Stagecoach came to Monument Valley sounds too wild to be true, but historical records back up every detail. Harry Goulding ran a small trading post in Monument Valley during 1938 alongside his wife Leonie, who went by the nickname Mike. The Great Depression had gutted their business and devastated the local Navajo community, leaving people desperate and jobs non-existent. Harry came up with an idea that would change everything. Word had reached him that Hollywood was producing Western pictures, and he knew that Monument Valley's towering red buttes and dramatic landscapes would look perfect on film. He gathered photographs of the valley taken by photographer Joseph Munch, scraped together his last $60, and made the drive to Hollywood. What happened next set him apart from everyone else. When Harry showed up at John Ford's office, the staff told him the director wasn't available, and most people would have left a card and driven home. Harry Goulding set up camp right outside that office instead. 3 days he sat there eating sandwiches and refusing to leave, just waiting for his chance. An executive finally came to throw him out, but as the man approached, those photographs caught his eye. He stopped walking, looked closer, and carried those pictures straight to John Ford. Ford saw Monument Valley in those images and understood immediately what he was looking at. Within days, Harry Goulding walked away with a $5,000 advance for accommodations, and Stagecoach went into production shortly after. That $60 gamble saved the Goulding trading post, provided jobs for over 200 impoverished Navajo workers, and gave John Ford the location that would define his entire career. 9 more films would bring Ford back to Monument Valley after Stagecoach, and none of it would have happened if one stubborn man had given up and left that Hollywood office. Hidden fact number 2. John Wayne's embarrassing salary. Something that still catches people off guard is that John Wayne wasn't the star of Stagecoach when it was being made, and he wasn't anywhere close to being the highest-paid actor on set. Claire Trevor played Dallas and received top billing over Wayne because she was an established leading lady who'd already earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Dead End in 1937. Her salary came to $15,000, the highest paycheck on the production. Wayne's situation looked completely different. After nearly a decade grinding through cheap Poverty Row westerns, he was still considered a B-movie actor. The truly shocking part is that his salary for Stagecoach came to just $3,700, which made him the second lowest paid principal actor in the entire film. John Carradine earned the least at roughly $3,666, beating Wayne's low salary by a mere $34. Here's where it gets even more striking. Tim Holt played Lieutenant Blanchard in what amounted to a minor role, and his paycheck came to $5,000, more than $1,000 above what the future biggest Western star in Hollywood history took home. The reason behind Wayne's low pay traces back to producer Walter Wenger, who never wanted John Wayne in the first place. Wenger pushed for Gary Cooper as the Ringo Kid and Marlene Dietrich as Dallas. Major studios including Fox, MGM, and Warner Brothers had all passed on the project, partly because Ford kept insisting on casting a B-movie actor that nobody believed in. Ford had to fight hard for Wayne, and winning that fight meant accepting that his protege would earn practically nothing. Wayne took the role anyway, and he later put it simply when he said he stepped on that stagecoach and it carried him a long ways. Hidden fact number 3. Ford's brutal treatment of his future star. Anyone who thinks John Ford felt grateful toward John Wayne for taking a risk on his film would be dead wrong, because Ford's treatment of Wayne on the Stagecoach set was absolutely brutal and completely intentional. In front of the entire cast and crew, Ford called Wayne a big oaf and a dumb bastard. He told Wayne that he acted like a poached egg and walked like a hippo. Nothing escaped criticism, not Wayne's line delivery, not the way he moved across the set, not even the way he washed his face. Claire Trevor witnessed one particularly harsh moment and described Ford grabbing Wayne by the chin and shaking him, while saying that Wayne was moving his mouth too much and didn't understand that you don't act with your mouth in pictures, you act with your eyes. This went on day after day, with Ford tearing into Wayne while treating the other actors with relative respect. Thomas Mitchell, who played the drunken Dr. Doc Boone, received similar treatment at one point and fired back with a line that effectively humbled the director. Mitchell told Ford to remember that he'd seen Mary of Scotland, a reference to Ford's 1936 flop that apparently landed hard. Wayne never fought back though, taking every insult and every humiliation without a word of protest. The reason Ford behaved this way reveals something fascinating about his methods. While he was publicly destroying Wayne's confidence, he privately told other cast members the exact opposite. He informed actress Louise Platt that Wayne would be the biggest star ever because he was the perfect everyman. Ford knew exactly what he was doing the whole time. He was stripping away the artificial acting habits Wayne had picked up during his decade of B-movies, forcing Wayne to stop performing and start existing on screen. The approach was cruel, but it worked, and Wayne came out of the experience as a completely different kind of screen presence. Hidden fact number 4. The hat John Wayne wore for 20 years. A small detail about Stagecoach tells you everything about how John Wayne approached his craft. The cowboy hat Wayne wears in the film wasn't a costume piece that came from the wardrobe department. It was his own personal hat that he'd been wearing in westerns for years before Stagecoach. That same hat stayed on his head for 2 decades of filmmaking after Stagecoach wrapped. Rio Bravo in 1959 marked the end of the hat's career because 20 years of use had left it simply falling apart with nothing left to save. Wayne didn't throw it away though, and that hat, the same one visible on screen in Stagecoach, ended up displayed under glass in his home for the rest of his life. To Wayne it wasn't just a prop, it was part of who he'd become. Hidden fact number 5. The secret metal bars that made the stunts possible. The legendary stunt work in Stagecoach contains details that have never been widely discussed, and the man responsible for them deserves more recognition than most people give him. Yakima Canutt coordinated all the stunts. His full name was Enos Edward Canutt, and he'd claimed the World All-Around Rodeo Champion title in 1917, 1920, and 1923. People called him the King of Stuntmen, and his work in Stagecoach shows exactly why he earned that name. The most famous stunt in the film features Canutt playing an attacking Apache, who falls between the lead horses pulling the stagecoach. He catches himself and drags on his back between the flying hooves, then releases and crosses his arms over his chest as he passes completely under the entire stagecoach and all 6 horses. Rising to his knees afterward proves that a real person just pulled off that feat. One take was all it took, with the horses running at roughly 45 miles per hour. The hidden fact behind that stunt involves secret safety modifications that made survival possible. Modified metal bars attached between the horses' harnesses kept them locked exactly 3 feet apart, and without those bars the horses might have drifted together and crushed Canutt during the pass. Canutt explained his technique years later by saying that you have to run the horses fast so they'll run straight, and when you turn loose to go under the coach you've got to bring your arms over your chest and stomach while holding your elbows close to your body, otherwise that front axle will knock them off. Ford watched that stunt and responded with just 4 words, saying he would never shoot that again. Whether the camera caught it or not didn't matter to him because nobody was doing that twice. Hidden fact number 6. The banned device that injured horses. This next fact carries a darker edge, and the film industry doesn't like discussing it. The Apache chase sequence in Stagecoach used a device called the running W to make horses fall dramatically during the action. This tripwire system would cause horses to collapse at full gallop, creating realistic-looking falls that looked spectacular on camera. The problem with the running W was that it caused serious injuries and deaths to the horses. Hollywood accepted this as standard practice at the time, but we now recognize it as animal cruelty. Decades have passed since the running W was banned, with the last known use believed to be in 1983. Those dramatic horse falls visible in Stagecoach today would be illegal to film under current regulations. Mentioning this isn't meant to diminish the film, but it represents an important part of cinema history that deserves acknowledgement. Hidden fact number 7. The impossible geography of the journey. Once you know this next fact, it will make you laugh every time you watch Stagecoach, because you'll never be able to unsee it. The Stagecoach travels from Tonto, Arizona to Lordsburg, New Mexico, a trip of about 180 miles heading southeast. Simple enough on paper. At one point in the film, though, the Stagecoach crosses the Colorado River at Lee's Ferry, and Lee's Ferry sits 200 miles north of Tonto. The Stagecoach is supposed to be traveling southeast, but somehow it ends up 200 miles in the opposite direction before getting back on track. The reason comes down to John Ford loving Monument Valley so much that geographic accuracy didn't matter to him. The stagecoach actually traverses Monument Valley 3 separate times during the film, which would be completely impossible given the actual route. When someone pointed out these geographic impossibilities to Ford, he showed no concern whatsoever. Someone else asked him why the Apache Indians didn't just shoot the horses to stop the stagecoach, and Ford gave the perfect answer by saying that would have been the end of the movie. He also pointed out correctly that real Apaches would have stolen the horses rather than killed them. Ford grasped something important about filmmaking that serves as a lesson. Movies aren't documentaries, and the emotional truth of Monument Valley's stunning visuals carried more weight than whether the geography made any sense. Hidden fact number 8. The Navajo always spoke Navajo. The Apache attack sequence contains a detail that adds an interesting layer to the film once you know about it. Apache actors didn't play the Apache warriors in Stagecoach because Navajo extras from the Monument Valley area filled those roles instead. Ford brought in over 200 local Navajo Indians to portray the attacking tribe and paid them full union wages, which stood out as unusual for that era. The Navajo people gave Ford the name Natani Nez, which translates to tall leader. Throughout Ford's career making westerns, his Navajo extras portrayed Comanche, Apache, Cheyenne, and Lakota warriors across various films, and regardless of which tribe the script called for, they always spoke their own Navajo language on screen. The dialogue audible during those attack sequences in Stagecoach is Navajo rather than Apache. Most audiences couldn't tell the difference, and Ford apparently saw no reason to change it since he cared more about authenticity of feeling than linguistic accuracy. If you're enjoying these hidden facts about classic westerns, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists for people who remember when movies came from craftsmen who genuinely cared about their work. Subscribe if you love the golden age of Hollywood. Hidden fact number 9. Why Andy Devine got the role of Buck. Andy Devine played Buck the stagecoach driver, and his distinctive high raspy voice makes him memorable in the role, but most people don't realize he wasn't Ford's first choice. Ward Bond was supposed to play Buck originally. Bond had worked with Ford regularly and maintained a close friendship with John Wayne. One problem stood in the way though. Ward Bond couldn't drive 6 horses. Handling a Concorde stagecoach requires a driver who can manage a 6-horse team, and learning that skill takes more time than the production schedule allowed. Andy Devine happened to be one of the few actors in Hollywood who actually possessed that ability. Arizona-born with real experience handling horses and coaches, Devine could do what Bond couldn't. This led to one of the funnier moments on set when Ford started bullying Devine the way he bullied everyone else. Devine reportedly shot back with a simple explanation for why he got the role instead of Ford's preferred actor, telling the director it was because Ward Bond can't drive 6 horses. Sometimes the most practical reasons determine movie history. Hidden fact number 10. The medicine man who controlled the weather. This stands as one of my favorite stories from the production because it shows how Ford operated on set. Ford wanted specific weather conditions for his Monument Valley shots, particularly what he called pretty fluffy clouds in his backgrounds. Weather in the desert doesn't cooperate with shooting schedules though, and cloud formations can't exactly be reserved in advance. Ford's solution involved hiring a Navajo medicine man named Hosteen So, which translates to big man, at a rate of $15 per week to control the weather. Whether you believe in the power of Navajo shamans or chalk it up to coincidence, the documented outcome is that Ford got his clouds. Weather cooperated throughout the Monument Valley shoot, and Ford considered those $15 per week money well spent. Explaining how it worked didn't interest Ford at all. Getting the shots he needed was the only thing that mattered. Hidden fact number 11. No paved roads to Monument Valley. Context about the production of Stagecoach puts Ford's commitment into perspective. During 1938 and 1939, when Ford was filming in Monument Valley, no paved road ran through the area. Paving didn't happen until the 1950s, and this remoteness explains why Monument Valley hadn't served as a major filming location before Stagecoach. Getting a film crew to Monument Valley in 1938 meant traveling over rough, unpaved terrain to reach a location sitting at 5,700 feet elevation. The crew bunked in an old civilian conservation corps camp near Kayenta, Arizona, where conditions were described as Spartan, with constant strong winds and extreme low temperatures. Comfort didn't factor into Ford's concerns because those images were all that mattered to him, and he willingly put his cast and crew through considerable hardship to capture them. Another hidden detail worth noting is that only John Wayne among the principal actors actually traveled to Monument Valley. Most of the main cast never left California's San Fernando Valley, with their scenes filmed at locations like the RKO Encino Ranch, Iverson Movie Ranch in Chatsworth, and other California spots. The chase sequences came from Lucerne Dry Lake in the Mojave Desert. Ford intercut the Monument Valley footage with the California footage so seamlessly that audiences never noticed the difference. Hidden fact number 12. Orson Welles watched Stagecoach 40 times. Influence is where Stagecoach's importance to cinema history becomes impossible to deny. Before making Citizen Kane in 1941, Orson Welles watched Stagecoach more than 40 times, and this isn't rumor or exaggeration because Welles confirmed it himself across multiple interviews throughout his life. Welles described his process by saying he'd learned whatever he knew in the projection room from Ford. After dinner every night for about a month, he'd run Stagecoach, often with a different technician or department head from the studio sitting beside him, asking questions about how things were done and why they were done that way. To Welles it felt like going to school. Another interview captured Welles putting it even more directly when he called John Ford his teacher, noting that his own style had nothing to do with Ford's, but that Stagecoach served as his movie textbook because he wanted to learn how to make movies, and that film was such a classically perfect one. Welles also said he preferred the old masters, by which he meant John Ford, and John Ford, describing him as a poet and a comedian who gave you a sense of what the earth was made of when he was at his best. Consider what that means. The man who made what's often called the greatest film ever created, Citizen Kane, learned how to direct by studying Stagecoach night after night for a month. That goes beyond influence into the territory of a masterclass. Hidden fact number 13. The ceiling shots that predated Citizen Kane. Speaking of Welles and Citizen Kane, film historians sometimes overlook a fact that deserves more attention. Citizen Kane earned fame for its innovative use of low-angle camera shots that show ceilings in the frame. Standard Hollywood practice before Kane meant leaving ceilings off sets because it made lighting easier, but Welles insisted on building ceilings and shooting from low angles. Critics often cite this as one of Kane's technical innovations. John Ford did it first in Stagecoach, though, 2 full years before Citizen Kane reached theaters. Interior shots at Dry Fork and Apache Wells in Stagecoach utilized low-angled cameras that required set ceilings to be built. Those solid ceilings forced cinematographer Burt Glennon to use naturalistic lighting through doors and windows, which added to the film's visual realism. None of this diminishes what Welles accomplished, but it does reveal that when Welles sat watching Stagecoach 40 times, he was studying techniques that he would later expand upon in his own work. Ford was already innovating before Welles ever stepped onto a Hollywood soundstage. Hidden fact number 14. Wayne's 80th film. A perception exists that Stagecoach was John Wayne's big break, the moment he transformed from unknown to star, and that's accurate in terms of his career trajectory. The hidden fact that puts everything in perspective is that Stagecoach was approximately Wayne's 80th film. 80 movies came before his breakthrough. Wayne had worked in Hollywood since the late 1920s, first handling props at Fox Studios while playing football at USC, then acting in countless B-westerns and serials throughout the 1930s. The Three Musketeers serial western series featured him as Stony Brook, and film after film came from Poverty Row Studios. The New York Times noted at the time that Wayne was the first star Republic Studios had ever loaned to a major lot, which tells you exactly where his career stood. After 80 films, Hollywood still considered him a Republic B-movie actor rather than a real star. Stagecoach changed everything, but it changed everything for a man who'd already put in a decade of work and dozens of films without recognition. Wayne's success wasn't overnight. It came from years of grinding persistence. One more detail rounds out the picture. After Stagecoach turned him into a star in 1939, Wayne didn't win an Academy Award until 1969 for True Grit. 30 years separated his breakthrough from his Oscar. Wayne appeared on Quigley's Top 10 Stars poll every year from 1949 to 1973 except for 1958, but Hollywood took its time officially honoring him. Hidden fact number 15. Ford's one-word telegram. 1966 brought a remake of Stagecoach directed by Gordon Douglas, featuring Alex Cord, Anne Margaret, and Bing Crosby among the cast. When Ford heard about the project, he sent Douglas a telegram containing exactly one word. The telegram read simply, "Why?" Nothing else, just that single word of bafflement. Ford couldn't fathom why anyone would attempt to remake a film he considered perfect. The 1966 version reached theaters and received a poor reception, which made Ford's one-word critique look prophetic. A 1986 television remake carries an interesting origin story of its own. The original concept was a Western musical featuring the country supergroup, the Highwaymen, with Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Waylon Jennings in the cast. The whole idea reportedly started when someone told Waylon Jennings he'd make a good Ringo Kid. Neither remake has come anywhere close to matching the status of the original. Hidden fact number 16. Canutt's technique for survival. Returning to Yakima Canutt for a moment reveals wisdom about his approach to stunt work that extends beyond filmmaking. When Canutt explained how he survived passing under the stagecoach, he shared something that sounds almost backward at first. He said you have to run the horses fast so they'll run straight. Natural instinct would suggest slowing things down and making the stunt safer by reducing speed, but Canutt understood that horses running at speed maintain a straighter line than horses moving slowly. At 45 miles per hour, those horses weren't going to drift or change direction because they were locked into their trajectory. Stagecoach wasn't even where Canutt developed this stunt. A 1937 film called Riders of the Dawn featured him performing an earlier version 2 years before Ford's film, and by the time he worked for Ford, he'd refined the technique. Canutt's stunt work influenced filmmakers for decades after Stagecoach. Steven Spielberg directly homaged the stunt in Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, during the scene where Indiana Jones goes under the Nazi truck. Stuntman Terry Leonard performed that gag after failing at it first in The Legend of the Lone Ranger earlier that same year. The Raiders' truck was specially raised higher than normal, while the road was dug out to give Leonard more clearance. 1967 brought Yakima Canutt an honorary Academy Award for creating the profession known today as stuntman, recognition he'd earned many times over. Hidden fact number 17. The out-of-focus introduction. One of the most famous shots in Stagecoach is John Wayne's introduction as the Ringo Kid, where Ford used a rapid dolly shot that tracks quickly toward Wayne from a medium shot to close-up as he spins his Winchester rifle. Film historians consider it one of the most iconic character introductions in cinema history. Most people don't notice that the shot briefly goes out of focus during the zoom. Ford insisted on doing only one take, which explains the flaw. His philosophy centered on getting what you needed and moving on, and if a shot wasn't technically perfect but captured the feeling he wanted, that was good enough. Watch that introduction again knowing this information, and the slight blur becomes visible as the camera rushes toward Wayne's face. Ford cared more about the energy and impact of that moment than technical perfection, accepting a minor flaw to preserve the spontaneity of the take. A small detail like that tells you a lot about how Ford worked and what he prioritized. Hidden fact number 18. Wayne learned his walk from Canutt. This fact changes how you see every John Wayne Western you've ever watched. That iconic screen presence Wayne carried, the drawling, hesitant speech and hip-rolling walk that became his trademark, wasn't something Wayne developed on his own. He copied it from Yakima Canutt. Wayne admitted this himself when he said he spent weeks studying the way Yakima Canutt walked and talked because Canutt was a real cowhand. Everything about Canutt was genuine. He'd been a rodeo champion and a real working cowboy who happened to end up in pictures. Wayne studied how Canutt moved and spoke and carried himself, then absorbed those mannerisms into his own performance style. Beyond the physical presence, Wayne and Canutt together pioneered realistic screen fighting techniques that filmmakers still use today. Movie fights before them looked fake and theatrical, but they developed a style of staged combat that appeared brutal and authentic on camera. Every Western featuring John Wayne from Stagecoach onward carries a performance shaped by his observation of a real cowboy, and that authenticity people respond to in Wayne's screen presence came from studying the genuine article. Hidden fact number 19. Thomas Mitchell's devastating comeback. Thomas Mitchell, standing up to Ford's bullying with that sharp reference to Mary of Scotland, has already come up, but there's more to his story that makes it even better. Mitchell won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance as Doc Boone in Stagecoach, and at the ceremony his acceptance speech showed typical modesty when he simply said he didn't know he was that good. The remarkable hidden fact about Thomas Mitchell involves what he accomplished in 1939. That single year saw him appear in 5 of the most acclaimed films in Hollywood history. Those 5 films were Stagecoach, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Only Angels Have Wings, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Gone with the Wind. The range of roles across those 5 movies is staggering, and the fact that he worked constantly throughout 1939, moving from production to production while delivering memorable performances in each one, speaks to extraordinary talent. Mitchell went on to become the first male actor to win the Triple Crown of Acting, meaning an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony Award, which he achieved in 1953. When Mitchell fired back at Ford with that Mary of Scotland crack, he wasn't just defending himself against a bully. He was speaking as one of the most accomplished character actors in Hollywood, a man who understood his own worth even when a director tried to diminish him. Hidden fact number 20. The painting that inspired the chase. The final hidden fact looks at where Ford found inspiration for Stagecoach's legendary chase sequence. Ford admitted taking inspiration from a specific painting, Frederick Remington's 1907 work called Downing the Nye Leader. Remington ranked among the most famous painters of the American West, known for dynamic depictions of cowboys, soldiers, and Native Americans in action. Downing the Nye Leader depicts exactly what its title suggests, an attack on a stagecoach with the lead horse being brought down. Ford studied that painting and translated its frozen moment of violence into 7 minutes of virtually dialogue-free action on screen. This connection between fine art and filmmaking reveals something about Ford's approach to his craft. Making a Western wasn't his only goal. He was engaging with a visual tradition of depicting the American frontier that stretched back decades. He saw himself as part of that tradition, using a different medium to tell the same kinds of stories that painters like Remington had been telling. The chase sequence in Stagecoach runs approximately 7 to 7.5 minutes with almost no dialogue, pure visual storytelling influenced by a painter who understood how to capture motion and drama in a single image. Ford took that static image and made it move. 20 hidden facts about a film that changed everything have now been covered. Stagecoach wasn't just a good Western, it was the film that proved Westerns could be art. Before 1939, Westerns carried a reputation as kid stuff, B-grade pulp movies that no serious actor or director would touch. Ford himself hadn't directed a Western since 1926's Three Bad Men, a gap of 13 years before Stagecoach. 7 Academy Award nominations came to the film with 2 wins, competing against legendary productions like Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in what's often called the greatest year in Hollywood history. Thomas Mitchell took home Best Supporting Actor while the musical score won Best Score. The New York Film Critics Circle named Ford Best Director. Frank S. Nugent of the New York Times wrote that Ford had swept aside years of artifice and talky compromise to make a motion picture that sings a song of camera. Variety predicted it would rank among the surprise big grossers of the year, and the prediction proved correct. Influence from the film extended far beyond its own success. 40 viewings taught Orson Welles before he made Citizen Kane. Akira Kurosawa answered a question about which painters he studied by saying he studied John Ford. Steven Spielberg has said he watches a John Ford film before starting every movie because Ford inspires him. Ingmar Bergman called Ford the best director in the world, and Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, Sergio Leone, and countless other filmmakers have named Ford as a major influence. The British Film Institute's 2002 survey voted Stagecoach the greatest Western of all time. The American Film Institute ranked it number 63 among the 100 greatest American films. The Library of Congress selected it for the National Film Registry in 1995, and the Vatican included it on their list of important films under the category of art. All of it traces back to a $60 gamble, a B-movie actor nobody believed in, and a director who recognized something in Monument Valley that no one else had seen before. Wayne put it best when he said he stepped on that stagecoach and it carried him a long ways. All of us got carried somewhere too, into a new understanding of what Western films could accomplish, what American cinema could achieve, and how a group of talented people working in a remote desert location with a modest budget could create something that would still matter more than 80 years later. The real hidden truth about Stagecoach goes deeper than trivia. It wasn't just a movie, it was a statement about what becomes possible when artists commit fully to their vision, when they fight for the people they believe in, and when they refuse to accept the limitations others try to place on them. Ford fought for Wayne when no one else would. Wayne took a role that paid him less than the supporting players. Canutt risked his life for shots that might not even work. The Navajo extras brought authenticity to roles that Hollywood had always handled carelessly. Harry Goulding sat outside an office for 3 days because he believed in what he had to offer. Commitment made Stagecoach great, not just talent. Belief made it great, not just skill. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that remembers when movies came from people who cared about making something lasting. Leave a comment telling me which of these 20 facts surprised you the most, and if you know any hidden facts that didn't make this list, share them because I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.